Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for having me here again today. And as Kevin said, there might be a little bit of politics, but generally, it all applies. So on Friday, the president fired the Commission of Bureau and Labor Statistics after the newly released federal jobs report didn't, let's say, align with his expectations. It's one way to say it. Of course, his comment was about the replacement that he was going to choose was going to be, quote, somebody who's going to be honest. Well, my daddy said that figures never lie, but liars figure. So I'll leave that right there. Right. So if you feel like I do, it's just another daily dose of the insanity that seems to be reality now. And it's overwhelming at times. I vacillate between white-hot rage, utter confusion, and a deepening sadness for what our country appears to be devolving into. So today's message might seem a little irreverent or maybe campy, maybe a completely unreasonable leap of logic. But then again, unprecedented times call for creative solutions, and that will include our approach to theology as well. So let's imagine for a moment that we're not just navigating a political climate or a national identity crisis or even the oft-predicted end of days. No, friends, we're in a zombie movie. Or maybe a horror flick, or perhaps a slow-burning apocalyptic saga with a huge budget for special effects, but the writing team consisted of the producer's drinking buddies and one unemployed cousin. Yes, we are talking about living through a Trump presidency, but life has always been a never-ending news cycle. But in addition to the prerequisite forest fires, tsunamis, corporate malfeasance, and international political unrest, we are also now inundated with whatever craziness is coming from our mostly elected leaders. So it does feel like we're trapped in a cinematic nightmare with some very high stakes, doesn't it? But don't worry, you and I have a lot in common with the heroes and survivors in those kinds of stories from the silver screen. We have tools, we have each other, and we have our UU principles to guide us. I have found 4 lessons from the doom and gloom genre of film that can help us not only survive, but live with integrity, humor, and purpose. So in the same way you can supposedly fight fire with fire, I'm going to try to put some real in the surreal. So let me get a few disclaimers out of the way before I jump in. Firstly, I've tried really hard to not include any spoilers in case you haven't seen some of the films I'm going to refer to and you want to go see them. Second, I am not the kind of person who retains every plot twist and cinematic device. I can't tell you who the producer was on a movie that was made last year, never mind 10 years ago. That's not me. Movies, for me, are purely a form of entertainment. If there's a plot hole or some big inconsistency, it's got to be really huge for me to even notice it or for me to consider that a detractment from the film. I'm also not a huge fan of the pure horror genre as such. I've never understood the attraction of blood and guts, and that never really seems to move the plot forward. It just seems to be gratuitous violence. I do, however, love an end of the world or a post-apocalyptic tale. Think about The Day After Tomorrow, where the extreme weather events threaten to end humanity, and even if you haven't seen the movie, you probably recognize the scene with the Statue of Liberty buried up to her chin in snow. That was the poster that they used, and it pops up every now and then. I grew up watching and rewatching the Mad Max movies. And lines from Beyond Thunderdome, which came out in the mid-'80s, are etched not just in my mind, but in the American consciousness. Think 2 men enter, 1 man leaves. That was Entity, played by Tina Turner, she was a goddess to me. And M. Night, I'm going to say his name wrong, Shyamalan's 2002 movie Signs, about powerful aliens trying to take over Earth, is one of my favorites. And the first of his movies that I saw, so don't judge. I was busy in 1999 when Sixth Sense came out, because that's one of his too. I did see it eventually. And if you haven't seen Zombieland, the first one is, of course, far better than the sequel. I recommend that one as well. I am not a Woody Harrelson fan. Generally, when I'll go see it, if it's got Woody Harrelson in it, but I like Zombieland. And we can't leave out the effortlessly campy Mars Attacks. If you haven't seen Mars Attacks, get Netflix. With Jack Nicholson as the shady president of the United States, and Pierce Brosnan as an insufferable know-it-all, who does get his comeuppance in the end. This 96 movie is worth all the popcorn. And on top of those, I spent quite a few hours of my youth watching the Night of the Living Dead franchise. The original film was made in 1968, and the sixth installment was in 2005, so it spanned a huge amount of time. But George Romero standardized what a zombie movie should be. So now that you have some idea of the basis of where my theology today is coming from, let's start. In every apocalyptic film, the people who endure the disaster usually aren't the ones with the biggest guns or the biggest spaceships. They're the ones who band together, watch each other's backs, and bring different strengths to the table. There's always a medic, a mechanic, a brave but reckless one, a wise elder, a comic relief. You know the list. An example of this is the Brad Pitt film World War Z. Amid a global zombie outbreak, it's not the biggest weapons that make the difference. It's quick thinking, cooperation, and unlikely alliances across cultures and borders. Brad Pitt plays a United Nations investigator, so he has all these connections to different places around the world that help them survive. And at one key point, his character is explaining to somebody the work he did before this zombie outbreak happened. And he said, movement is life. And he's referring to the times before the apocalypse that for his line of work, if you could get away from a situation, from an impending disaster, you were more likely to survive, which seems really obvious. But that line becomes a metaphor in the movie, not just for running away from zombies, but for staying adaptable and responsive and human even when you're in crisis. It's the people who stay alert and work together across the divides that survive, not the zombies. As the characters struggle, the one line that stands out is, at the end of the line, the ones who survive aren't the strongest, they're the ones who stuck together. And as you already know, that's covenantal community. We read the covenant this morning. We survive not by separating into factions, but by leaning into our diversity. We now identify this value as pluralism for the new little flower with love in the middle of it. We are all sacred beings, diverse in culture, experience, and theology. In the olden days, we said it was, we affirm and promote the inherent worth and dignity of every person, which is still valid. I love that one. That's one of my favorites. But in zombie terms, that means we don't leave anyone behind, even if they run slower or they're into things that we don't understand. Lady in the Water, which is another M. Night Shyamalan film, it's a fantasy film. It's really not about the end of the world, but it has an excellent storyline when it comes to diversity and stereotypes. In this case, the first assumptions that our hero makes about other people in the cast are fatally incorrect. He needs to assemble a team to save this otherworldly creature who has shown up in our world. He's assuming the guy trying to finish his book was the writer, and the kind lady who grows plants and knows how to fix everybody's sniffles is the healer. And that ends the story almost before it starts. And it's an object lesson to remember we have to be careful not to stereotype people based on what we think or what they look like. A person's strengths may not be that obvious. Now, that movie got panned. It didn't do very well in the theaters, but it's still a really good film, and I recommend it. And in our current world, one where cruelty may be normalized or marginalized people are under threat, our strength is still each other. Community isn't just nice, it's survival gear. So lesson number 1 is every zombie movie needs a diverse and loyal crew. Scary movies also love the dark places. That's where the monsters hide and things jump out at you. Outside the movie theater, the danger isn't always what just jumps out at you. Sometimes it's what slowly becomes just the way things are. I'm calling out the creeping presence of ICE in our communities, the inability to keep up with the cascading catastrophes coming out of our judicial system, and a refusal by some people to recognize that the changes that we're going through are not for the better. Jordan Peele's movie from 2017, Get Out, if you haven't seen it, is a brilliant and terrifying exploration of this idea. I actually had to watch it in pieces because it just made me so... The protagonist, Chris, a black man, visits the home of his white girlfriend's family and slowly realizes that the smiles and the politeness and the seeming wokeness all mask something terrible. At one point, Chris's girlfriend's mother, Missy, hypnotizes Chris. In theory, she's going to help him with his smoking habit, but she doesn't. And as he descends and loses contact, she says, "Now you're in the sunken place." It's very creepy. Very creepy. And she uses this hypnotic trigger later in the movie to attempt to subdue Chris. But that quote has since become a cultural shorthand for enforced silence, for being aware of injustice, yet unable to move or speak about it. It's chilling, but it's also very familiar. Our Unitarian Universalist principles call us to a free and responsible search for truth and meaning, and that's our torch against the darkness, our flashlight. We can't let ourselves be lulled into accepting fear, authoritarianism, or injustice as normal. We continue to ask questions. We notice the creeping shadows. We name what others try to hide. And in practical terms, that means we speak up at school board meetings. We call out racism. We push back against the propaganda. We bring the light, and yes, we still check under the bed. So your second lesson is to either know how to light a torch or always carry a flashlight. And whether it's in a zombie movie or our heroes are trying to survive invading aliens, you figure out pretty quick that the zombies or the ETs aren't actually the worst part. It's the living people who become selfish, power-hungry, and cruel when things fall apart. And this is the entire emotional arc of The Walking Dead. I didn't watch the whole series, I watched the first part of it, but the undead, who are the walkers, after a while, that story fades into the background, and the real danger are the other humans, the governor, the whisperers, all the leaders who say, "I'll protect you, but only if you kneel for me." And in one haunting episode, our protagonist, Rick Grimes, says, "We are the Walking Dead." It's a sobering moment in the show. He realizes that what's truly terrifying is not the decay of the bodies. It's the decay of ethics, of empathy, and of trust. And in our world, the real world, we see this too. People willing to sacrifice truth, democracy, even basic kindness for the thrill of domination or the promise of order. And Benjamin Franklin said it long before anybody had even thought about zombies. Those who would give up essential liberty to purchase a little temporary safety deserve neither liberty nor safety. But as UUs, we stand on the side of justice, equity, and compassion in human relations. That means we don't become what we fight against, even when we're angry, even when we're afraid, even when my social media feed looks like something out of The Purge. I should stop looking at social media, but it's like watching a train wreck. You don't really want to see it, but you can't look away either. So we hold to our values. We resist with love, because who we become in crisis is our real test of faith. So lesson 3 is, the monsters are rarely the ones who actually have fangs. But here's the happy ending. Every good apocalyptic disaster movie, and maybe even the not so good ones, ends not just in destruction, but in transformation. The world may fall apart, but there's a child who plants a seed, a couple who finds each other, or a group who starts to rebuild. And the film that comes to mind for me is City of Ember. If you miss this one, it's perfectly understandable. It's very post-apocalyptic. Humanity has moved underground to escape a nuclear winter that has lasted hundreds of years. And the sole power source that powers this underground city is finally sputtering out. Bill Murray, which is hilarious, plays a selfish, gluttonous leader who looks out only for himself, and he refuses to divert from the accepted fables of why the populace is where it is. It's 200 years later. Their lore doesn't match the facts, but they don't know that because bits and pieces have been lost along the way. It takes two plucky young people to refuse to accept their fate, and they, of course, find a way to save the world. I will warn you that this film got a 53% on the tomato meter, which is the Rotten Tomatoes website, but I thoroughly enjoyed it when I saw it. Now, granted, I was suffering from insomnia, and I caught it on like Turner or something at 2 o'clock in the morning, but the lesson still applies. And honestly, Bill Murray is the bad guy. Was really comical, and I'm not even sure that was entirely intentional. So, City of Ember, look it up. You can probably get it for free these days off of Prime or something. But we see the same kind of redemption of the human race in WALL-E, and that was the song from. It's definitely not a zombie movie, but it is post-apocalyptic. And I had a little tussle this morning because when my husband saw these, like, why is this in here? I said, well, WALL-E's a post-apocalyptic movie. He went, no, it's not. It's a cartoon about a robot. It's set after the world is so full of garbage that humans can't live there anymore. And I was like, no, that's post-apocalypse, honey. That's, and this is how Wikipedia describes it. The film incorporates various topics, including consumerism, corporatocracy, nostalgia, waste management, human environmental impact and concerns, obesity and sedentary lifestyles, and global catastrophic risk. How uplifting, right? It's a Pixar film. I don't want to spoil it if you haven't seen it, so just go see it. It is a cartoon, but it's really so well done that you won't even notice that. And they don't call them cartoons anymore. Apparently they are animated films. It's a cartoon. In the end, a plucky band of humans, accompanied by their robots, of course, save the Earth and the human race. But I'm here to remind you that we are all a plucky band of humans, young and old. And our UU faith calls us not to just survive this chaos, but to create something better from it. Okay, I know some days it feels like all we're doing is screaming into the void. I get that. But when we talk about the goal of world community with peace and liberty and justice for all, we mean we're already laying the foundations, even if what we're doing is eating ramen noodles and canned beans by our little torchlight. And our newly stated value of transformation says we adapt to a changing world, but that doesn't mean that we're not the ones creating the change. That doesn't imply that we accept what comes to us. So if there's a silver lining to the fear and division of these times, it's that more people are waking up. More people are starting to understand why marginalized people feel the way they do. I love the F around and find out videos people are posting on Facebook and TikTok, and it's not Twitter anymore, it's X. There's a former Trump supporter, I believe he lived in New York, who had a green card since he was 3. His parents brought him here as a child. He never bothered to finish his citizenship. He did fine because he had a green card. He's 40 years old. He took his children across the border to Canada. And when he came to come home, he had some misdemeanor traffic tickets, and Border Patrol won't let him back in the country with his children. And he posted a video to this effect and said, I might have voted for the wrong person because when I said close the borders, I didn't mean me. A little bit of schadenfreude there for me. I hate it for his kids, but he is literally stuck in Canada trying to hire an immigration lawyer to figure out how to get back into the United States. And he posted a video to say, yeah, maybe this isn't what I voted for. Right near the beginning, there was a very popular video that went around. It was a lady obviously in a trailer in a mobile home. She's literally screaming about how is she supposed to feed her children because the state cut her aid. And she says it repeatedly, the government cut my check, the government's starving my children. Sweetie, the government you're talking about are people that you voted for. And I hope she found other resources. I don't want anybody to go hungry. But those kinds of information coming out now is not something we ever saw 10 years ago. And I think it's a sign that things are starting to shift. The end result is more people are getting involved, more people are getting educated, more people are questioning systems that have been broken for far too long. And that's hope, and that's change, and that's us. So lesson 4 is every apocalypse is also a rebirth. So what do we do in a world that sometimes feels like we are actually watching Rome burn in real time? First, we laugh. We done a lot of that this morning. Thank you to our technology. We laugh at ourselves. We can laugh at others where it's merited. That's not mean. We stay weird. And all that means is that you stay true to yourself, whoever you are. Stay weird. We bring snacks because you can't fight fascism on an empty stomach. And we hold hands so our circle keeps getting bigger. We form alliances with other survivors of decency, and we vote like it matters, because it does. And we will not stop encouraging others and educating others about voting either. But most of all, we remember that the apocalypse doesn't win. Not on our watch. Not while we still have flashlights and faith, and that most precious of all the survival tools, each other. So go forth, my fellow keepers of the faith, as hopeful, fierce-hearted protagonists of the movie of now. May we all live to tell the tale. So in conclusion, bring snacks, bring hope, and bring each other. Roll credits.